Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I want to begin tonight's drash by talking about football. I have heard from many, I'm going to say this with pride, I didn't hear from y'all, I heard from you guys. That's how we say it. Up north. Some of you guys even said, to whom am I rooting? People from Michigan are very loyal. You should know that, okay? I know we're in SEC culture down here, but it's all Michigan. But many people have called and want to know, what's the wager? Alan? Got a couple calls from your son. What's going to be the bet between the University of Alabama and the University of Michigan? People have called and said, are you ready for Monday evening, like something that I've never experienced in my life? A Shechianu moment, the University of Michigan playing against the Crimson Tide. Now, the last time we beat Alabama, I believe, was the 2000 Orange Bowl in overtime. You guys remember that game? You missed the extra point. It was cold. Tom Brady was the quarterback, but I gotta tell you, I appreciate all of the passionate talk regarding Monday's football game. Where am I going to watch it? My stress levels. I got to tell you something. Deep in my neshama, it is truly wonderful to get a break from our current reality and to hear the passion of this congregation with regard to their football team. Win or lose, I'm truly excited that people from Michigan and people from this congregation put aside their stress and anxiety. It's going to be a good win or lose, on my end, a couple of hours. We don't have to watch the news, we get to watch football. But believe it or not, in the state of Michigan, the Michigan Wolverines, it's not the team that is capturing the hearts and minds of Michiganders. Believe it or not, it's the Detroit Lions. The last time the Detroit Lions won their division was in 1993. I was 11 years old. I was in the car on Sunday. The game wasn't on televised. I had to listen on the radio to Minnesota play-by-play, which was very difficult. But when the Lions intercepted the ball in the fourth quarter and won the NFC North for the first time in 30 years, I was tears, crying, screaming. It was a hit of emotion. And in social media, you found many Detroiters filming themselves of the game and what would be the outcome. So for the first time in 30 years, the Lions showed up. And the passion and excitement of something we've never experienced before in such a long time really hit home. But as I celebrated the Lions' victory, and they play tomorrow night in Dallas, they could win out and be the number one seed in the NFL playoffs and host their first playoff game for the first time again in 30 years, the question that I asked myself, and the same thing with the Alabama-Michigan football game, are we allowed to experience such joy and excitement because of our current realities? And, while in my car, delighted of the Lions' victory, and you're not going to understand it, but you're from Michigan, it was almost like a religious event. But I kept on asking me, and I come home and I talk to Rachel, I talk to my parents, how excited can we be when we simply change the other channel and then we're reminded of our current realities? And the more information that comes in, the more that we're horrified and dismay again with the world around us. So the question is, and I'm asking myself, when are we allowed to experience the joy of our secular life? And even as I looked up this week's Torah portion, Vayechi, and Jacob lived, Rashi is bitter because he doesn't understand. If you open the Torah scrolls and you look in the book of Genesis, there isn't that special break between the next parshiot. If you open up the Sefer Torah, you'll see there's a page break, or there's space in between, but there's not space with the last parasha in the book of Genesis, Parshat Vayechi, and Jacob lived. And Rashi understand this to be is that even though Jacob was dying, he was in a state of melancholy. He didn't have confidence in his sons. He didn't have confidence of what this spiritual exile was going to look like for the Jewish people. So for Rashi and our other rabbinic commentators, Vayechi and Jacob lived, this Torah portion, the last Torah portion, is sad because simply they can't rationalize why there's not a break in the Torah scroll to teach us that this spiritual exile is going to haunt the Jewish people in perpetuity. But the good news is about rabbinic commentary. Rashi and our medieval theologians, they can say X and we can say Y. Because in the previous parasha, we learn of the beautiful reconciliation between Benjamin and Judah and the brothers and their fathers, and the ability for people to come together and to put aside pettiness. And when we think about the previous Torah portion, Joseph was sold off into slavery, and he forgave his brothers. And even though Jacob and Joseph would soon pass away, we still can find hope. We still can find courage. And even though when we go to Exodus next week, we're going to begin with a Pharaoh that doesn't know the Jewish people, and our slavery begins, Vayechi and Jacob lived. Jacob lived. For us to keep on living, and for us to establish some type of new Judaism post-October 7th, we have to live. And I guess it was at this moment for me, Sunday afternoon with the Lions' victory, and hearing from all of you guys about the football game, that as much as October 7th is destroying our neshamas, our souls, we have a moral obligation to live. But there's a difference between living and forgetting. We're not supposed to forget what happened. I know we're not going to forget, and we're not supposed to disengage from the situation. No, we're commanded to show up more than ever. Hal v'chomer. But if we're going to create some type of joyful Judaism, we need to figure out how to live in both worlds. Now, that is an incredible, a difficult task to do. We can look at how Holocaust survivors had to process their Judaism after the Shoah. And then we were listening to the interview of Mia Shem, the beautiful young Israeli woman who was held hostage, and her trauma. We have an obligation. Vaichi, and Jacob lived, we need to live. Now, what do we do? On Monday afternoon, for those Alabama fans, I want you to cheer as loud as you want. I want you to go after Jim Harbaugh as much as you want. And I'm going to be celebrating a semifinal game. And then in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be celebrating either a wild card game in Detroit or eventually a division series. Because if we're supposed to live and create a joyful Judaism, we have to take care of ourselves. People have been talking about self-care, finding time to exercise, but I love data. Self-care doesn't work if people around you don't give you that self-care. And what does that mean? Surround yourselves with people that will help lift you up. We can exercise every single day, we can meditate and do yoga, but if we don't have a support system to help take care of us, we're going to have difficulty living on. So I can promise you one thing. I've never been a fan of December 31st and the secular New Year. Our New Year's in September. It started in January. Temple Emanu-El, we're going to do what we do best. Our religious school is back. I'm teaching a survey course of Jewish history. Our choir will be back. And we're going to take each week at a time to be that support system for all of you. Because we need to live. So when I see you next week, it's going to be a new year in the Gregorian calendar. But Judaism tells us that as much as we live in the Jewish world, we're obligated to live in the secular world too, through Torah, through God, and through Israel. So as we conclude the book of Genesis, let us be strengthened and strengthen some more to find a way to live in both worlds. We can be sad, but we also need to live. Shabbat Shalom.